They spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
Sometimes the most magical stories transform into real-life horror shows, and Disney's live-action Snow White might be the most striking example yet. What started as a blockbuster in the making ended as a cautionary tale for Hollywood. A staggering budget, near-empty theaters, and star Rachel Zegler at the center of controversy that nobody saw coming. How did a fairy tale so beloved for generations spiral into a box office nightmare?
I truly do believe that. There's something wrong with her. She's disturbed, she's unhappy, and she thinks it's about feminism and the patriarchy and about abortion. But the reality is she's just not stable, like the majority of people in Hollywood. They're just not stable human beings. I would highly advise that you boycott this film, no matter how much your children love Snow White.
Stay right here, because the story behind this colossal flop is more dramatic than the film itself. From the moment Disney announced they were remaking the 1937 classic, people were buzzing about fresh takes and modern twists. News outlets raved over the casting of Rachel Zegler, best known at the time for her role in West Side Story, and Gal Gadot, the woman who brought Wonder Woman to life, stepping in to play the evil queen.
You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White. Right. You should shut up.
With that star power, fans expected a massive crowd at the premiere and a surefire box office win. Through all, Disney's live-action reimaginings, despite often meeting lukewarm critical reviews, usually delivered massive profits. But the mood shifted almost as soon as the first official details leaked. The movie's production budget soared well beyond $200 million. Some insiders hinted it crept all the way to $270 million, potentially pushing it even higher than The Little Mermaid's recent remake.
This truly is the worst casting, maybe, in the history of the film industry.
Rachel Zegler, she's an asshole.
People started asking if yet another classic needed a costly live-action spin, especially with the memory of Pinocchio and Dumbo fresh in their minds. Early negativity on social media made it clear this wasn't just another nostalgia-filled Disney delight. Audiences seemed wary. At the same time, Disney believed they could bank on brand loyalty. Yet behind the polished marketing photos and carefully curated social posts, a sense of unease hovered.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, I don't need your business. Thanks.
Leaks from those close to the production indicated mounting tension, swirling controversies about story changes, and a leading actress who wasn't afraid to speak her mind, sometimes to the studio's dismay. Even before the cameras finished rolling, the online chatter was, is this going to be a hit, or is it about to crash spectacularly? Unfortunately for Disney, we now know the answer all too well.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
Many fans first grew concerned about the project after watching interviews in which Rachel Zegler critiqued the very essence of the original Snow White. She dismissed the 1937 classic's romantic plot as weird, questioning why Snow White's entire story would focus on a guy who literally stalks her. That statement spread like wildfire on social media. Her skepticism about the traditional storyline put longtime Disney devotees on edge.
And you know the saying, go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million in China.
The internet tends to protect its nostalgia fiercely, and to hear a lead actress throw shade at one of the most iconic Disney romances ever ignited a surprisingly heated debate. The real firestorm, though, began when Zegler implied that the original film was outdated and that her iteration would be the opposite of a damsel in distress story. In isolation, there's nothing inherently wrong with modernizing a classic, but her words came off as outright dismissal of the beloved original.
The star, Rachel Zegler, is unbelievably charmless in public.
Commentators wondered, if Zegler had such disdain for the source material, why take the role in the first place? Others questioned Disney's judgment. Did they realize how fans of the 1937 classic might respond if a rising star openly criticized the fairy tale that essentially started Disney's entire feature-length animation legacy? Social media trolls also took issue with Zegler's heritage.
Spend 1 minute on Snow White and how it totally imploded at the box office this weekend.
She's Latina, accusing Disney of taking liberties with Snow White's appearance. Many supporters defended her, pointing out the hypocrisy of some critics. But the arguments never died down, and her repeated statements labeling the prince as a stalker only stoked more resentment. Already, cracks in the production's carefully managed image were showing, and the larger public sentiment was shifting from excited curiosity to outright skepticism.
If Disney wants to make more woke films that tank at the box office, they are more than welcome to do that, but maybe think of an original idea.
As chatter surrounding Zegler's statements grew, insiders whispered that on-set harmony wasn't exactly a fairy tale either. Gal Gadot, famous for her warm public persona, apparently tried to keep things professional. But rumor had it that she and Zegler weren't exactly best friends. One moment, they'd be pictured smiling together for official press shots. The next, a behind-the-scenes story would leak, hinting at awkward clashes over personality differences and, more importantly, their divergent political stances. Zegler didn't shy away from voicing her opinions on social media. Whether about social justice issues or high-stakes global conflicts, she was fearless. Some might say too fearless. Gadot, on the other hand, has historically kept her personal perspectives relatively measured, especially when representing major studios. The more outspoken Zegler became, the more tension seemed to build. Rumors flew that Disney executives held private meetings, urging her to tone down the commentary at least until the movie's release.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
I don't think they're going to buy it. I don't think they're going to watch it. I don't think they're going to like it.
Multiple industry insiders alleged that Mark Platt, one of the film's producers, personally pleaded with Zegler to approach her public statements more cautiously. Things came to a head when she appeared at Disney's D23 Expo. According to one source close to the event, Zegler ended a warm, audience-friendly presentation with a surprise political statement that had nothing to do with Snow White.
She was, as woke as they are.
Every time she speaks, she gets less likable.
Disney executives reportedly scrambled backstage, realizing in that instant they might be dealing with a full-blown PR crisis. A film with such a massive budget depends on broad appeal, both in the US and internationally, and the last thing Disney wanted was alienating large segments of their global audience. For all the chatter, speculation, and behind-the-scenes drama, the moment of truth arrived when the film finally hit theaters.
A few lessons for Disney. Number one, stop cannibalizing all your old IP. It's really bad. It's really bad business. Number two, please stop changing all of the historic plots, which actually have meaning to generations of people, to instead become generic woke story about how woman leads revolutionary uprising and she don't need no man.
The hype around opening weekend for any major Disney release is usually enormous. Advanced ticket sales, press junkets, and social media campaigns typically push families and nostalgic adult fans to theaters in droves. This time, though, something felt different. Reports came flooding in that opening night attendance was shockingly sparse. Social media lit up with screenshots of nearly vacant seating charts, posted by baffled moviegoers who might have expected the showtimes to sell out.
But you don't seemingly like your own character, so she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
Instead, they found themselves among just a handful of viewers. As the weekend progressed, the numbers confirmed the doom. A meager $3.5 million in Thursday previews, and a total haul of about $43 million domestically by the end of opening weekend. Compare that to The Little Mermaid remake's $95 million opening, or even Dumbo's comparable performance, though Dumbo had a much smaller production cost.
Rachel is literally the star of a Disney movie, and she acts like she's some sort of victim, and that's the sort of mentality that is just poisoning people's minds. She acts like her life is so bad.
Rachel Zegler herself went to see the film with a small group of friends in a nearly empty theater. Video clips on social media caught them approaching the concession stand asking for 2 tickets, please, while the employee had no clue which film they were referencing, despite them holding Snow White-themed popcorn buckets. The mood was both comical and painfully awkward. Zegler tried to cheer and laugh it off, clapping at her own name in the credits, but the entire scene underscored the uncomfortable reality. This wasn't just a flop. It was shaping up to be one of Disney's most spectacular failures in years. One of the biggest flashpoints in the Snow White saga involved the 7 dwarfs. In the original 1937 film, the dwarfs were key characters, each with distinct personalities. Modern audiences still adore them for their charm and comedic relief. But the live-action version faced a double bind when actor Peter Dinklage publicly criticized Disney, calling them out for wanting to be progressive in one area, casting a Latina as Snow White, while still telling a story about dwarfs that he considered an outdated trope. Dinklage's rants spread fast. Some agreed, saying Disney needed to evolve the depiction of the dwarfs for modern times. Others, including some actors with dwarfism, argued that removing or drastically changing the dwarfs would mean depriving certain performers of much-needed roles. Controversy escalated. Disney panicked, then put out a hasty statement about working closely with the dwarfism community and taking a different approach. The final result? CGI dwarfs. Once preview images leaked, fans and critics alike were unimpressed. The digital beings looked stiff, uncanny, and a far cry from the endearing originals. Meanwhile, each alteration and the ensuing uproar drove production costs higher. Multiple reshoots, overhauls of marketing strategy, and hush-hush rewrites all meant more money pouring into a film that was already ballooning in budget. That $270 million figure loomed larger by the day. Whether it was the dwarfs or the modernization of the storyline, every attempt to handle controversies only sparked fresh ones. By the time the film was ready for release, Disney found itself saddled with a product that seemed destined to struggle. The normal playbook for a film of this scope would be glitzy premieres, high-profile late-night show appearances by the cast, and a worldwide press tour culminating in star-studded events in London, Los Angeles, and beyond. Instead, Disney took a far more subdued approach. Insiders claim that as the controversies piled up, and as negative buzz online refused to die down, the studio decided on smaller, more controlled fan events. Rather than hosting a blowout red carpet premiere in Hollywood, Disney opted for an understated screening at the El Capitan Theater with minimal press coverage. They replicated this hush-hush tactic in Europe, where the usual grand spectacle in London's Leicester Square was replaced by a more modest castle event in northern Spain. Some saw it as Disney quietly admitting they didn't have faith in the film's success. Others believed the studio wanted to avoid any potential on-camera controversies from their outspoken star. Either way, the typical fanfare was missing in action. All the while, rumor had it that major Disney figures, executive producers, marketing heads, even Bob Iger himself, were deeply frustrated with the way everything was unfolding. The negative coverage only intensified when certain outlets published leaked stories about internal panic. Damage control became top priority, but the fires burned out of control with each passing day. Beyond the film criticisms, Rachel Zegler's personal statements on political matters ignited a culture war that spilled into the entertainment sphere. While many Hollywood stars weigh in on political topics, the difference here was timing. She shared polarizing opinions in the run-up to the film's release, sparking boycotts from viewers who disagreed with her stance. Then came the friction with Gal Gadot, who hails from Israel. Some of Zegler's posts appeared to align with causes that clashed with Gadot's background, placing an even bigger spotlight on their rumored rift. Disney was not amused. Concerned that Zegler's social media presence might alienate large swaths of the audience, they attempted to rein her in. According to various trade publications, there were multiple interventions by Disney higher-ups who insisted she pause or heavily vet her posts. Mark Platt reportedly flew across the country more than once, urging her to be cautious. For a time, she seemed to agree, working with a Disney-paid social media expert. But the tension never truly vanished. Gadot, meanwhile, found herself the target of furious online comments because of her own past ties to the Israeli army, setting off a separate wave of controversies that made PR teams scramble to protect the actress and her family. In the midst of all this, the film's identity became muddled. Was it a progressive retelling meant to champion diversity and empowerment, or was it unintentionally stepping into divisive political territory? By trying to do everything at once, pleasing old fans, appealing to new audiences, rewriting classic elements, and dealing with star-driven controversies, Disney wound up with a powder keg that no one seemed able to defuse. After the dust settled on the film's lackluster release, the numbers told a grim story. Opening weekend flopped hard, final tallies sunk even deeper, and the possibility of recouping that massive investment looked bleak. Hardly anyone saw Snow White in theaters, and online chatter turned downright merciless. Memes circulated comparing the deserted auditoriums to ghost towns, and comments poured in labeling the film a new low for Disney's live-action remakes. Rachel Zegler, once hailed as a promising newcomer, found her reputation under siege. While she retained loyal supporters who defended her against what they viewed as unfair criticism, the broader public image took a hit. Articles questioned whether her outspoken nature was an asset or a liability in an era when social media can make or break a film's popularity. But this fiasco didn't solely land on Zegler's shoulders. Many pointed fingers at Disney itself, accusing the studio of trying to have it both ways, praising themselves for bold casting choices and progressive storytelling, yet panicking the moment political discourse became inconvenient. The resulting mess left everyone wondering how Disney would proceed with future remakes. Would the company tighten its grip on cast members' social media freedom? Would they scale back budgets or try to refocus on more faithful adaptations to avoid fans' ire? Only time will tell. The fiasco also raised broader questions about the viability of these reboots. In recent years, the novelty of turning animated classics into live-action spectacles has worn thin. Critics argue the formula is stale, the creative choices disjointed, and the high costs rarely seem justified unless a film roars to success like Beauty and the Beast or Aladdin. With Snow White, Disney discovered in the harshest way possible that brand recognition alone doesn't guarantee box office gold, especially when controversies overshadow the final product. From the first signs of online outrage to the devastating box office returns, Disney's live-action Snow White showed how even the mightiest studio can stumble if the magic formula of cast, story, budget, and public perception collapses. Rachel Zegler's outspoken moments might have fanned the flames, but the real fault lines ran deeper. Creative choices that divided fans, mounting production woes that inflated the budget, and clashing visions of what this classic fairy tale should represent in 2025. In the end, what was supposed to be a dazzling revival of a cherished story became a cautionary tale, warning every entertainment giant that modern audiences can't be won over by name recognition alone. When viewers sense insincerity, relentless controversy, or a chaotic production, they'll simply stay home. The real question now is how Disney recovers from such a monumental flop. Will they rethink their live-action strategy? Reassess their approach to casting and star management? Or push forward, hoping the next remake lands better? However it plays out, Snow White might forever stand as an example of how quickly an ambitious blockbuster can lose its luster. Just like the original fairy tale cautioned about mirrors and reflections, Hollywood learned that public perception reflects back any misstep, sometimes more harshly than ever. Let us know your thoughts on this behind-the-scenes drama. Is Disney's formula finally wearing thin, or was Snow White just a fluke? The next chapter in this saga will likely determine the future of Disney's live-action dream and whether the studio can conjure up enough magic to redeem itself.